In this episode of Jerks Talk Games, we lace up our boots and step into the squared circle as we talk about wrestling games.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Jerks Talk Games. My name's Gary Hockin and with me is my good friend, Chris Tankersley.
Hi, Gary.
Yeah, you can say something, Chris, it's fine. We're going to talk this week about something that joins both of our two great loves, so computer gaming and big fat sweaty men in tights pretending to fight, pro wrestling. So decided this week we were going to talk about some of the great and not so great pro wrestling games over the years. Obviously, there's a link. WrestleMania weekend has just been, so those of you who also enjoy pretend fighting will know that WrestleMania weekend, the biggest weekend of the year for the WWE fans. If you're in our Slack and you like to talk about, join Chris and I talking weekly about how terrible the WWF is, come and join the Pretend Fighting channel. But yeah, we're going to talk about that this week. But before we do that, Chris, what have you been playing lately?
So the only thing I have been playing, basically since the day it came out, is Zelda Breath of the Wild. I, unlike you, have not been able to procure a Switch, so I've just been playing the Wii U version. But pretty much any free time that I have, you just hide your Pro Controller. That's the regular controller, though, isn't it?
That's the regular controller,
yeah. Any free time I have has been playing Zelda. It is probably the best. It is the best Zelda game that has ever come out, if not possibly the best game ever.
Oh, wow. So, yes, we would definitely... I mean, what I have been playing Breath of the Wild also. I managed to acquire a Switch, More by Luck Than Judgment, in one of our local shops that you would never think would have one in stock, just happened to have one in stock. I was like, I'm going to get one. So, I've been playing it. I am not very far into the game because I've been trying to only play it when I'm traveling. Although I have capitulated and I was like, I'm not going to connect this up to my big TV and use it as a proper console. I'm only going to play it on the road. But yeah, I couldn't resist because the game is so damn good. I was like, yeah, I can't just play this when I'm traveling. So 2 thumbs up. I suspect we will be doing an episode just on Breath of the Wild in the foreseeable future, I would guess.
Yes, at some point we will definitely be doing probably a Zelda episode, but probably talking primarily about Breath of the Wild.
Yes, indeed.
If you have not played it, get it. Like, you will not be disappointed. If you have to go buy a Wii U, go buy a Wii U.
I mean, it says something I've not put that much time into playing, but I definitely put double figures of hours. And I've literally done nothing because I keep meaning to try and get to the next. There's like you finish the tutorial area, and I won't give too much away, but you're very much held into a smallish area for the first half a dozen hours of play, I would guess. I don't know, 6 or 7 hours of play maybe. You're learning the game in this very much an island which you can't get off, a metaphorical rather than physical island, but you physically
cannot get off that island.
Yeah, I know, but it's not surrounded by water. So I guess, I don't know if that's a prerequisite for an island or not. I don't know.
That's true. It's a plateau. It's a very tall plateau.
Anyway, I've played probably twice as long. So yeah, I've played for more than 10 hours, but I've played twice as long outside the area, and I haven't done the first waypoint, which is a village. I literally just ran into the village last night before I put the controller down. So I've probably run around randomly looking at things for 10 hours of play without actually progressing any of the storyline.
I did the same thing. I don't know how they did it, because Nintendo is not known for making open world games.
Yeah,
they have created the perfect open world game. It's not just that, like, you can go anywhere or anything like that. The game doesn't actively stop you in any way from doing anything. So, like, I did the same thing. I jumped the wrong direction off the plateau. and because I was reading the map wrong.
Yeah.
And just started going out, and like I was running away from people, and then eventually I found a horse and I found a stable, and then I realized I'm in completely the wrong area. At this point, I now have the full map revealed. I've only done. I'm at most a quarter of the way through the main storyline.
Yeah.
I've got probably 50 shrines unlocked.
Yeah.
But I'm only a quarter of the way through the main storyline.
The disappointing thing,
and I have not found most of anything. Like I literally just got the Master Sword, which was awesome.
The disappointing thing for you is you're going to get to a point where the storyline tells you to go to places you've already unlocked, and it's just going to be so easy for you. But it's so much fun. Let's not go into too much detail because we definitely will talk about it. It's really good, but it definitely... I mean, I've only ever played one Zelda game before, but it has the feel of a Zelda game, but without the limitations, the historical limitations of a Zelda game. So, two thumbs up from me. The only other things I've been playing is Minecraft and Factorio, which is two things that I go back to all the time. So, I mean... Yeah, anyone who's listened to the first 10 episodes... Oh, I didn't mention this is episode 11. Woohoo.
Oh, sorry, it's 11.
But anyone who's listened to the first 10 episodes will know I play Factorio or Minecraft like all the time, so probably not worth me mentioning. Before we move into our main topic, since we last recorded last month, Mass Effect Andromeda has actually dropped. Neither of us have bought and played Mass Effect Andromeda. It's had strangely mixed reviews. I did read a few of them again to prep for this. Largely positive, but some weird criticisms that have been very much what the Mass Effect games historically have been good at. This game seems to have failed slightly at. So it's probably just worth a quick talk. Some of the points I put, the reviews, all the reviews I've read says that it's highly pornographic, which is weird for a role-playing computer game.
Well, and I've been watching a Let's Play of it because I could not ever get into the Mass Effect games. Like, I got Mass Effect 2, I think, free with Games with Gold, so I went and bought Mass Effect 1, played 10 hours of it maybe, and just could not get into it. Now I'm watching a Let's Play of it by Many a True Nerd. I don't see how it's highly pornographic, especially compared to the fact that in Mass Effect you can have sex with anybody. Just about. I'm really confused on that sentiment.
Yeah, we'll see. The biggest concern for me is that the combat system in Mass Effect has always been one of my favourite parts. So while you can play it like a first-person shooter, and there are elements of aim and click type shooting, you could always control your team, because typically you'd have a team of 4 plus 3 sidekicks, and you could say, that person's got a shotgun, and you use that cover, and there were quick key combinations, so you could look at a piece of cover in front of you and say, team member 2, go and hide in that cover there because you need to be closer. And it seems that it's got it done away with that whole tactical element of moving your teammates around, and also you could tell your teammates, you use your you have power that makes enemies levitate in the air. You use that one, and then you use your electric bolt, and that's a combo, and everyone blows up in a big, boom. That was a massive deal of the combat system, which they seem to have removed. It looks like you can.
They simplified it down to you can tell a team member or both of them to attack a specific character, and that's it.
That is a massive deal for me, because I used to really enjoy the whole sort of pause the game, because you can't pause the game in combat anymore, which was a massive part of this combat system. So, I'm skeptical, and it didn't get a good enough review for me to pay full price. It's going to have to wait for me to buy this until it comes on offer on Steam, probably, or on the PS4 store. it's quite worrying. It's quite worrying.
I've enjoyed the Let's Play I've been watching so far. The animations are really weird and like, and I'll see if I can splice in some video of like some of the like weird crab walking and stuff that they've done. But at least with the female writer character, like she just looks dead behind the eyes most of the time, and it's really off-putting. So it's not just like the weird kind of like robotic movement that they do. It seems like they didn't do very much QA with the animations, which I guess they had. One thing I was reading was they had offshored it to one of their smaller studios, one of their smaller EA studios.
Yeah, okay. I get.
And then the other thing is the story, and I guess this has been a problem with Mass Effect. It's been going downhill since Mass Effect 1. The storyline gets kind of disjointed and not as involved. Like, so in the Let's Play, they're at the point where they have met a brand new race of aliens. It's fairly early in the game, so it's not really spoiling anything. They meet a brand new race of aliens, and there's a point where they're talking about how one of the things that alien race is doing is they're looking up artifacts and like history of that race to know where they came from and like their history. And the main character says, oh hey, that sounds pretty cool. I wish I was an archaeologist. When at the beginning of the game, she's talking about how the archaeological digs that she went on and all of the archaeological research that she did back on Earth and in the main universe. So it's really weird in some of the writing, like the tangents that they shunt you off of.
The writing and the combat was always the big deal for me. Like Mass Effect 3 is right up there with one of my favorite games ever. It's right up there. I really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm sad. The writing was always very clever, even for someone like me who just clicks next to the dialogue. It was compelling. And the decisions they'd make you make often were, the expense of somebody dying for the greater good and all that kind of moral horse shit, if you will. I don't know. I will buy it. I'll have to buy it because it's a family of games which I will always buy every single thing they produce, sadly. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it looks interesting enough, but I'm not paying $60 for it.
No. So, yeah, before I go and kick your leg out of your leg.
I don't need you with a bad leg doing it, Brent. You're too damn selfish, and that's why you're sitting there with a bad leg, and that's why I kicked your leg out of your leg.
Let's move on to the main crux of our discussion today. So, this is going to be really interesting. Not for the first time in one of these podcasts. This is a subject that Chris knows a ton about, and I have barely played. I have played some of the games on our list, but very few of them. But I do still, as usual, have highly strong opinions. So, if we move on to the wrestling games,
yes, it's my time to shine now with my.
It's always your.
It's always my time to shine.
It's always your time to shine.
Tonight will be the night.
Indeed. So. Yeah, I guess. Let me try and think. There was a WWF game on a Sinclair Spectrum I remember playing. As I frantically Google.
For the most part, I have, and I'll probably be talking mostly about the NES, the Super Nintendo, the PlayStation, and like later era games. There have been a ton of wrestling games over time. There's actually a really awesome YouTube channel. Okay, so there's a really awesome YouTube channel. If you want to know about like just the massive history of wrestling video games, it's Joe Gagney's Fun Time Pro Wrestling Arcade. He is up to... can I get a list of how many videos he has? He's got a ton of them, and he's on episode 64, just going through every single wrestling game all the way back to the Commodore 64. and like ancient stuff like that. So there have been lots and lots of video games. Many of them are bad.
I remember playing something at my friend's house, who I haven't seen for years. And my overriding memory is we used to play this wrestling game on his, I'd like to say Spectrum, but it could easily have been a C64. And my only memory was when you won a fight, there was this huge trophy standing next to you. Like, that's my only memory of the game. But we played hours and hours of it. We really did. So I have played these things, yes. But I guess, you know, I don't have anything to say until kind of 99-ish era where I started playing some games. So I don't know if you played anything before that.
Yeah, so I remember playing it's WWF WrestleMania for the NES. It is a really shit game, like bad. There was a black box game for NES called Pro Wrestling, which it just had like generic wrestlers in it. But you could throw your opponent against the ropes. You could get outside the ring. There was a crowd. There was a referee. And it was really, really nicely done. It's just there's not a whole lot you can do with a 2-button gamepad for wrestling. And if you happen to watch the Twitch stream last night, I was doing horribly at it because it's just a non-intuitive game. WWF comes out with an NES game. It's basically side to side. There's no front rope because that would interfere with the camera angle, I guess. There's no crowd. There's really no sound. You can't get in and out of the ring. It's just crap. It's got like 6 players, like Hogan, $1 Million Man, Honky Tonk Man, Savage. But again, it suffers from horrible controls. And I'll probably be overlaying the bad gameplay. Like, I was playing it last night. I'm just running around a ring. I can't hit anybody, and it's junk. Like,
it sounds like the real life WrestleMania 4, if I remember.
Yes, it is. Yeah, they model it after the real WrestleMania 4. But it's funny how bad they did, and there were a lot of good wrestling games. Like, this was the worst. This is by WWF, and by Acclaim, no less. Acclaim held the licensing for 12 years somehow.
Yes,
I don't know how, but they came out with WrestleMania in '88. They came out with an arcade game in '96.
That was okay. The arcade game was okay.
Yeah, so they eventually got their act together, and they did basically what were beat 'em ups inside of a ring, and they got kind of comical. So I think both WrestleMania and WWF in your house, they had where you, like, if you were the Undertaker, you could shoot out like black souls, I guess, were that Undertaker had collected, and he would smash you over the head with a tombstone, like a literal tombstone.
Oh, nice.
Razor Ramon, when he went to go do a chop, his arm turned into like a razor to like actually hit you. But
the biggest problem. Sorry, mate. The biggest problem about that game was, like every single arcade game of the era, it was way too difficult. Like, you pay.
It was a quarter muncher. Yeah.
You'd pay a quarter or whatever. I would pay over here 20 pence, and you'd get, like, I don't know, you'd be lucky to get 3 minutes out of or 2 minutes out of the game. It was so difficult.
But they were fun, and they played into the comical aspect that WWE, or at the time WWF, was still in, because this was right before
it's pre-Attitude
the Attitude Era. Right? Right before the Attitude Era took off. So it's still really super cartoony. But then we did have the Attitude Era kick off, and you got games like Warzone and Attitude, which were just and I know that you said you had fun with Attitude. They were kind of just as bad as WWF WrestleMania on the NES. They were just hard to control and janky. They looked better.
So the difference, I think, between the pre-PlayStation, pre-Attitude game, like, I found the Attitude game very easy to win matches.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in typical WWE, WWF fashion, it was all more about the like story, and you could you could have a career as a wrestler rather than it being a series of one-off matches.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that was the first game where you could, like, there was a character editor, so you could make your own wrestler, put whatever trunks or clothes or whatever you wanted them to wrestle in, and. Yeah, it would work. So I enjoyed that game not because of the mechanics of actually wrestling, but because of the fact that you could have a storyline to it. And I really enjoyed that. You could work your way up through to the US title, the Intercontinental Belt, the main event WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, all that stuff, which I really enjoyed. That was the part I liked about it.
Yeah, and I think Acclaim did really, really well with the early versions of games. But what I think really scared the WWF was in 96, Aki, which at the time I think was still a company called The Man Breeze, which is really weird because Japan. They signed a deal with WCW in 96 to start making games. And then you had actual, like, polygonal fighting games, like actual real wrestling games, show up. So you had WCW versus the World, which I think was the first game that they came out with. Came out on the PS1. Looked pretty good. And it played okay. Unlike the current games, you still had to know button combinations, so it wasn't a game you could just pick up and play. You could do like basic punches and kicks, but that was about it. Anything else you had to actually know, like you're playing Street Fighter and know the button combinations to pull off moves. But I think in response to that, WWF said we need to do the same thing. And Acclaim I don't think they did not do it as well as Aki did. Their engine wasn't as good. Even back then, compared to, I know comparing PS1 and N64 is kind of unfair. The PS1 just looked so much better. Even though it was, I think, less detailed than the WWF games, it still looked better because they, like, I remember the, like, attitude especially, like, they looked really stretched and, like, molded over the skeleton instead of it being, like, an actual body type.
Yeah, yep. It doesn't age well. Yeah, I totally agree. It doesn't age well. But, no. I mean, at the time, given that I didn't watch much WCW at the time, I only watched WWF, and, you could be Stone Cold Steve Austin. What more would you like in a computer game? I don't see any other, like, point or anything that else is needed to be done. So
I want good quality fighting and buy fake fighting game.
That's fair.
That's what I demand. That's fair.
I mean, I don't know if you ever played Attitude, because it did have, it had the things. Yeah, it did have the things. You needed to know the key combinations in order to be able to do the moves, and I don't think it was as bad as you make out. But then I never played the WCW Aki games, so. How can I comment?
I will clean the cartridge and I will go back and replay it. I tried to play it last night, but the cartridge was dirty. Now, I will say, at this point, Aki created an incredibly robust engine for their fighting games. Enough that WWF bought it out from underneath WCW. And basically just told Acclaim, thanks for 12 years of service. You suck. We're going with someone better. Because by that point we had WCW versus the World. You had WCW Nitro, which came out the year after that. Which WCW versus the World was kind of weird. You had like 8 WCW characters and then 20 Japanese characters that nobody knew who they were, because Aki created the engine in Japan, threw in all these wrestlers that they didn't want to pay licenses for, and then threw in the 8 WCW wrestlers that they licensed. Then you had WCW Nitro, which was the same basic engine. They cleaned it up a little bit, but you only had about 12 characters to choose from, with some hilarious. You could make them rant on the screen, and they would do a little promo about why you should pick them. And I will splice in Alex Kidd's here because it's hilarious.
Hey man, here's Alex Ride. If you want to have high-flying acrobatics and total wrestling action, pick me, and I show you what Alex Ride is all about.
But they would go on just like an in-character rant on why you should select them for the video game.
That sounds good.
It was amazing. It was great. And then they had WCW versus NWO World Tour for the N64, which
was that the game?
Amazing game.
Was that the game where you had, if you were playing as the WCW, you had a choice of 3 characters, but if you were playing as the NWO, you had a choice of 141 characters?
No, that is WCW NWO Revenge, the game that came out after it.
Sorry, it doesn't mirror real life storylines from the WCW period of the time then. So
no, that was accurate. Everybody was in the NWO.
Yeah.
But what you ended up with was this kind of and I dubbed it as the golden days of the N64 in our show notes. You had WCW versus NWO versus World Tour. You started getting the really heavily detailed character creator, move creators, entrance creators, all sorts of stuff, which I know like Attitude had, but I think the WCW games did it better. And then you have WCW NWO Revenge, which just doubled all of the goodness that World Tour had. The N64 had a really nice sound chip in it, so you had really nice digitized sound in the game. The movement of the characters and the fluidity of it was, especially for the time, just amazing. Especially coming from like 2D fighters, where like Capcom can make an excellent 2D fighter, and so can SNK. But this kind of brought that fluidity and this ease of playing to a 3D realm. And like I said, it was so good that WWE basically signed Aki on as their gameplay producer, dropped Acclaim, and took the code base that they built for Revenge and built WrestleMania 2000. Which again, it was an iteration on the WCW games, but they added a bunch more stuff to it. Character creator got better. You now have the huge WWF roster, and if you had a Game Shark, you could actually pull up the WCW assets because they didn't take them out. Because Aki are awesome programmers and they know how to program.
Yeah, but why bother, right?
Well, it's essentially all they were doing, mostly between Revenge and WrestleMania 2000, it was a skin swap for the most part, and like bug fixes and stuff like that. So it is, I think, the superior version of that. But then you have WWF No Mercy in 2000, which at this point, and going back and playing it last night, it has aged incredibly well. It doesn't look super great, but it plays so well, and it looks good enough that it is still a game that, like when I got my N64, when I repurchased my N64, that was one of the first games I picked up, and I still play it on and off before Zelda took all of my time. Because it has, especially up to that point, massive roster, awesome character creation. You could do so much with that engine. And again, the fluidity of pulling off moves and doing things is just incredible. And then when you consider that's just an N64 game, it is probably one of the best N64 games. Even if you don't like wrestling in general, it is an N64 game you should pick up just to experience how well this game was put together with the limitations of that the N64 had.
I can't comment, having never played it. It looks amazing from the screenshots, I have to say.
It is, and it still holds up today.
It looks pretty cool. It really does. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then of course, Acclaim having a wrestling engine and no major wrestling promotion to create games for, decided to go with Paul Heyman's amazing ECW promotion. The promotion that's remembered fondly in everybody's memories, much more fondly than it actually was at the time. I don't know how ECW has managed to pull that trick off. Because everybody remembers it as being this intense, cool little indie promotion where in reality it was a load of shit with maybe the odd good match or certainly some great promos over the years. But
it suffers from the Attitude Era problem. So like I've been listening through the Attitude Era podcast, which starts in 98 or 90, at the beginning of the Attitude Era, and they've been going through it. There's
97-ish, 97.
There's a lot of crap in the Attitude Era. There's a lot of stupid things that they did.
Of course.
Though I still think my favorite point was when Boss Man fed Al Snow his own dog in a stew. But there was a lot of bad stuff, but there's enough good stuff that people remember it fondly. And so in ECW fashion, Acclaim gets a license from ECW. They create 2 games. I have not been able to find the second one. I've only got the first one. They suck horribly. They made Attitude worse than it was. And ECW folded, as it did, still owing Acclaim money.
Of course they did, yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure ECW owes me money at this point in some way, shape, or form. And I'm going to go ahead and apologize for all of the in-wrestling jokes that we're going to make for all of our non-wrestling
I'm sorry. I know. It's hard. It's hard,
No,
but it is what it is, right?
It's funny that not only did ECW not pay their wrestlers, they didn't pay the video game publishing company that made a video game.
No, I know. I feel sorry for Tommy Dreamer. Probably got the brunt of that problem, like he did with everything else from ECW. So, yeah, there you go. Sorry,
it's fine though. It's fine though. He's on the Edge and Christian show now. Which, if you have the network, go watch that. They're going to do season 2 here. It's hilarious from a wrestling fan perspective. Acclaim right before they went bankrupt themselves did the ECW games to no fanfare whatsoever. It was pretty bad. But what we did see was another kind of change of the guard. So we had Acclaim for 12 years. We had Aki for realistically about 4 or 5 years by the time you take Japan stuff into account, like Japanese games. But then you have another company called Ukes Media Creations show up with their own wrestling engine. And WWF and WWE decided to switch over to them from Aki. I don't know if there was necessarily a falling out or just like a contract ended or whatever it was, because I couldn't really find anything concrete. Aki is still around. They're now named Sin Sophia because they went from the Man Breeze to Aki Corporation to Sin Sophia. They are excellent at naming things. But they're still making games. They actually still make quite a few wrestling games, which is kind of interesting. I did not know this until probably a couple years ago. They actually did the Def Jam Vendetta fighting games. It's actually the same basic engine that's in No Mercy and stuff, just cleaned up and made more 3D-ish. But they're still making games. But now, since about 2000, the actual year 2000, Ukes has been using their fighting engine in wrestling games, and they're still in the games today. So it's 20. They'll be working on the 2018 game right now. So they're going on 18-ish years, 17, 18 years of partnership with the WWF. I believe the first one was SmackDown for PS1.
Yes, I owned that game. I didn't tend to play it too much. It was a good game. Like, I have to say, it was a good game. It was a better game in that you could just pick it up and have one like arcade style fight for 10 minutes and then just throw it aside. Yeah, it didn't have the long-term appeal, I think, for me personally, of attitude, but it was certainly a better game, as in just a one bout type game. It was much better, much easier to pick up. Yeah, it was a good game. It was a good game.
Yeah, it was much more arcadey in the speed and the gameplay style, which made it much easier to pick up. Like, you didn't have to really plan out your moves. They didn't have like the spirit meter and stuff. I guess they still kind of did. They had that same basic thing, but it was much easier to pick up and play. And being a PS1 game, looked much better than the N64 games. This was a late era PS.
It was good looking game actually for PS1.
Yeah, you go back and you look at like the WCW games, and they look like N64 games. SmackDown, you're getting actual venues that they wrestled in. The character models look so much better. The PS1 had a pretty decent amount of power behind it, and they figured out how to make it work. The one that I have is actually SmackDown 2 Know Your Role, which came out actually not that long after. SmackDown came out in early 2000, and SmackDown 2 came out in late 2000.
I didn't buy it because I had SmackDown 1, and it didn't appear to be much of a difference between the two at the time.
It's not a huge difference. It is definitely the better of the two. So, like, if you don't have either, and you're interested in picking up old games, pick up number 2. If you have the chance, pick out Here Comes the Pain, which I think is the best PS2 game, probably out of all the main wrestling games. But SmackDown 2 was better, just slightly better character models. They got some more stuff right. But that you can kind of see the start of with SmackDown, and then SmackDown 2, and then Here Comes the Pain, which came out I think the year after that, after SmackDown 2. They're iterating and cleaning up the engine, and then since the engine works so well, they're just throwing more crap on top of it. So you have that. SmackDown Here Comes the Pain also got rid of just the Spirit Bar, which is just this nebulous kind of idea of how well your character is doing. And supposedly, like it was in the Aki games, it wasn't just a combination of like how hurt your character was or anything like that. It was how engaged the crowd was. Because yes, both Gary and I know that wrestling is fake, and it is much. Sorry.
He said it. It's still real to me, damn it.
Spoilers. Wrestling's not real. It is about the pageantry and the show that they are putting on, and the Spirit Bar does take that into account.
It kind of makes
if you're putting on a crappy match, it's not fun for anybody, even the performer.
If I remember the bar, you couldn't pull off a finishing move until you had enough built up in the bar. So it's kind of like reverse health or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but it would fluctuate up and down. So you could if you're playing No Mercy, you could have a match. You build up your Spirit Bar, and you could do your finishing move. And if like they kicked out or like you just didn't do your finishing move, your Spirit Bar would drop, and you could rebuild it. So it did fluctuate with like how well the match and how well the match was received. SmackDown Here Comes the Pain drops that, and now we have something kind of like what we have now in the modern games, where you can target specific areas of the body. You have stamina, so you really have to gauge how this character is not a very quick character. So like you're playing with like let's say Kane, he doesn't have the ability to run around and stuff because that's not the kind of character he has. You have to play to that character's strengths and weaknesses. So if you create a character and you want to jump around and you want to do flippy shit, you have to make someone with a high amount of stamina because they have to have the stamina to pull off all those things. So it's probably the first kind of modernish game, and it's again still holds up really well. It's a PS2 game. The character models look excellent, especially for the time. And if you can pick it up, I would highly recommend. You should be able to get it for like $10 or so, like on Amazon or at a used game store. None of these wrestling games are super expensive, which is one reason why I like collecting them. But SmackDown Here Comes the Pain is an excellent addition to the series. Now after this, they did the. I don't think they had quite done the draft. Do you remember what year the first draft was?
I do not. For some reason, I am thinking 2010, but that seems like it's way too late.
That seems way too late. Let's.
Yeah.
2000. Oh, 2002. That's way
Wow.
earlier than I thought it was.
Yeah, that was. I just picked a number out of my head. Obviously, it's fine.
Yeah, the draft was first used in the brand extension of 2002 and
Oh,
officially
yes,
accepted
yes,
in
yes,
2004.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we just
The
had the
thing-
recent one.
The thing, of course, with these games, I didn't play any of these games. So basically, until for another 13 years, I didn't really play any wrestling games, which is where I just sit here nodding on video. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel I played one of the early SmackDown versus Raw games and hated it, and then never really dipped in.
Yeah,
till
so
later on. So
yeah, so 2006, they started doing yearly releases. They took a page from Madden and decided that we can milk this every year, which for wrestling, actually, like NFL, it makes sense. Your roster changes, you get new storylines, the characters evolve. It doesn't make sense to bring out a game every couple of years because the games quickly become outdated. WWE 2K17 was outdated the day it hit the shelf because the rosters were different because they did they did another draft last year, which completely screwed up the game. But so they went yearly in 2006. So you now had SmackDown versus Raw, which played into the idea that in WWF they had done an actual brand split. They split the wrestlers into two different pools. You had you had the Raw wrestlers, and you had SmackDown wrestlers. And the games would play off of that. And they just did incremental stuff really up through 2013. SmackDown versus Raw ended in 2011. They had tons of match types. So you had, excuse me, Hell in the Cell, First Blood matches, Inferno matches, regular cage matches, Royal Rumble matches. Any kind of match you would want, you could do in 2011. You had this thing called Universe Mode, which I think they introduced in SmackDown vs. Raw, like 2010, I think maybe, where you could build storylines and kind of play like a booker almost. So you didn't even have to actually wrestle. You could just set up storylines and see how they evolved and how well they did between the characters. But then that all ended when THQ went under. That was a pretty damn good run they had for.
They did. I'm trying to think. Like for me, THQ are synonymous with WWE games, right? I don't know what else they released. Oh, were they Saints Row maybe?
I don't think so, but through the power of the internet, let's look.
I'm just trying to think, like, what they were synonymous with the WWE games, weren't they? I can't think of what they did that over the years that was.
Yeah, for me, that's really what they did. Let's see, they did. Oh, that's everybody who bought their stuff. List of THQ games. This podcast is turning into Let's Read Wikipedia.
It always is.
See, they did the Avatar games.
Oh right.
They did a Banjo-Kazooie game. Oh yes, they did Big Mother Truckers.
One of your favorites.
No, it's just a shitty game. But
it sounds like it would be something that you. They did do the Saints Row games.
It's a big rig racing game, yes, but it is not a very good one. They did Darksiders, which is a pretty good series of games. Destroy All Humans.
Cool.
Which I believe next month is coming out in backwards compatibility on Xbox One. What else do they have in here that was pretty good? Home Alone. That is
Home
probably
Alone. I see.
Home Alone. Yes, if you
based on the motion picture starring Macaulay Culkin, or different?
yes. However,
Wow.
they did not do the Genesis games, which were the better Home Alone games.
Okay. I'm missing out on them, and I feel like I should, as homework, find a way to play the Home Alone game before next time. I'll make that my homework this month, this fortnight.
I will put something on a ship and I will send it to you.
Okay, cool.
With the flag raised high. Red Faction, yeah, they did Saints Row, SpongeBob SquarePants games.
Cool.
Yeah, so they've done a ton of games outside of just WWE. But they dissolved and unfortunately are not a thing anymore. They dissolved in 2012.
2012, yeah.
So with that, the license moved on to Take-Two Interactive, who did all the 2K sports, which I'm not a big sports player, but I loved their 2K NFL series for Dreamcast. I probably bought every single iteration of that had come out on the Dreamcast. So I think they were a good spearhead to take over the games. They did WWE 12 and 13, which introduced new animation technology, so things looked much better. That the characters were more well defined. They looked much more like their real life counterparts. They got rid of some of the weird arcadey stuff that was in the Raw versus SmackDown games. Like I was playing 2011 or 2010 last night, and I know that Gary loves John Cena, so he put me in the Walls of Jericho. It was Cena versus Edge. He put me in the Walls of Jericho, and it would do this weird slow down fade. Motion blur thing when you were doing big moves. They got rid of that because it was doing some weird stuff to get around.
Cena put you in the Walls of Jericho.
Yeah,
that it is pretty
sense.
good mimic in real life as he steals other people's moves for his own. Yeah, that's pretty realistic stuff.
Yeah, but so the new animation thing allowed them to moves can be performed anywhere. It didn't have to be in a specific part of the ring, or the old games would do this weird teleport thing. Yeah. So if you were playing John Cena and you would do the 5-knuckle shuffle, if you were on the edge of the ring and you started that move, you both teleported into the middle. And it wasn't just he dragged you, you just teleported. It was really weird. But the new animation technology allowed them to do it kind of wherever. The ropes had much better physics, so as you fell on the mat, the ropes would vibrate. Little things that just made it look better. But they did 2 iterations of that before, or 3 iterations of that. Then they switched over to 2K branding.
Yeah,
in
2K, which is today's
which is today's branding.
Yeah.
So they did 2K14, which was the last PS3 and Xbox 360 based game, and then in 2K15 we got brand new consoles. So we got PlayStation 4, we got Xbox One, and they took the time, and I applaud them for this because I'm sure it was a very hard decision. But they threw out everything they had, and they started over. Because the PS4 and the Xbox One were much more powerful than the PS3, and they could revamp all of the stuff and make it a much better game. 2K14 was probably the best of the lineage of what SmackDown and Raw was. Again, you had tons of match types, huge character creation, all the stuff that you want in a wrestling game, and 2K15 threw all that out.
Yeah,
it had a
which with our developers head on here. If you didn't know, Chris and I both pretend to be developers in our day jobs. With a developer head on, must have been an incredibly brave decision, but B, incredibly liberating for them to be able to say, right, we get to go again here. We get to start from scratch and go again. That must have been equal parts terrifying and amazing.
It must have been, because the backlash was pretty big. Because you went from 2K14, which has huge roster, everything under the sun, an awesome universe mode, to 2K15, which has no real storyline element to it. The career mode's not that great. The creator wrestler was missing all sorts of stuff. The entrance editor was not super great. But it looked really nice. And if you look at it from a technological perspective, it was the Windows Vista of wrestling games. They hold on.
How damn in that is. That is
But Windows Vista came out. They threw away a bunch of stuff that they had before. Windows Vista was a bed. It was a bedrock for Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, which are much better than what Vista was. But to get to those newer versions, you have to throw everything out and start fresh. That's what 2K15 was. Go ahead.
So the 2K15, right? I am frantically trying to log into my PlayStation Store account to see what I paid for it. However, when I do try and log in, I get a JSON packet saying error, invalid client, bad client credentials. So I guess I've forgotten my password. But I paid a shit ton of money for.
I paid full price for it.
I bought this game. I hadn't bought a wrestling game for a long time, 10 years plus, and I bought this game, and I had a brand new console, and I was all excited, and I absolutely detested it.
Yep.
To the point where I didn't understand how the game was supposed to be played, because I'd skipped 10 years of wrestling games.
Yeah.
I didn't understand, like, whether it was to do with timing, whether it was to do with what button you pressed, whether it was to do with both. I couldn't get past the tutorial. Like, this is hand on heart. I mean, I didn't particularly try for hours on end. I probably tried for an hour to get past the tutorial and literally couldn't get past the tutorial. I didn't understand the mechanics. And when the tutorial was saying to me, do this, like, it wasn't saying whether I needed to do it at any particular time or was timing. It was just so difficult for me. Like, I fully suspect that if I'd gone to watch a YouTube video or spoken to somebody yourself or whatever, and they'd explained it to me in layman's terms, I could have picked the game up and played it. I just hated it. Absolutely hated it.
It is not that great of a game. Yeah, so 2K15 was done in the traditional uke style. So you grapple your opponent, and then from there you transition to another move. And there's basic punches and kicks, and you can do different things with, like, holding a direction and hitting a button. And it's a weird kind of game to come from, especially playing other fighting games where you have button combinations and you expect certain things to happen in a certain way, where really everything in a Ukes game is kind of predicated off that grapple initiation action. And it's also much slower than the old games. The SmackDown versus Raw, and even up through 2K14, were very much kind of arcadey in that moves happened really quick. You're really interested in, like, the big moves that get pulled off. Where 2K15 and 16 and 17 now, they're really predicated on playing a well thought out match and a well performed match. It's not just how quickly can I beat the other opponent. 2K16 added a star system where you actually got graded on how well the match was, and it's not just pull out all your big moves, get done in 30 seconds. If you do a real quick squash match, the game penalizes you for it. They want a well put together match with lots of back and forth, lots of different moves, stuff like that.
Wow.
So if you have a PS1 or Xbox, a PS4 or an Xbox One, don't get 2K15. It's not made for you. It's made for people like me that just buy the games every year. And they want your money. Pick up 2K17, which is probably the best version right now. They've now got a much better character creator in there. The roster is huge. The arenas and stuff are really, really nice. Everything looks really well polished. Like, you could tell when they spent time on a character model like Triple H. He looks like Triple H. Renee Young in 2K16 looks like some sort of weird gremlin, because I guess they didn't want to take the time to, like, like capture her face like in a reliable 3D scanner. But
yeah, I wonder why they decided to spend so much time on Triple H, who is now the the owner of the company.
It's really weird. But yeah, so now you have this game that if you understand how the wrestling game works, it's actually fairly easy to pick up. And if you're looking,
the thing I would say. Sorry, mate. The thing I would say is, if it was me, I would wait until 2K18 drops, which will be more the middle to end of the year than the beginning of next year. They normally drop around September time, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, so 18 should drop somewhere near the endish of this year. Yeah.
So there's two reasons. Number one is, 18 could be a really special game because of the new brand split, and they could make a more interesting game because of the brand split, like SmackDown vs. Raw was. And number two, 17 will obviously go down in price when 18 is released. So 17's already dropped heavily in price. What tends to happen is all the DLC will come out. Once all the DLC's out, the price just bottoms out, and you can just get the whole game for cheap. If you're a PC player, you won't get it until all the DLC's out, and it's like $30 maybe for everything. I paid full price plus season pass because I'm an idiot.
I'm an idiot. Yes, I'm a
stupid idiot, in the words of my favorite current wrestler. Yeah,
but you can find 2K17 for pretty cheap now. But if you can wait, I would. He's literally writing my name on a list. Wait until 2K18 comes out. It'll have all the probably brand split stuff. If you want to get into it now, 2K17 is pretty cheap. 2K16 is pretty easy to get into too if you want to try it out. It's got the showcase mode where you can do like a storyline. They have career mode, so you can create a wrestler, go through career modes, all that stuff. Wrestling games have had a long and varied past. There's a lot of bad ones out there. In short, if you want to try to just pick some, skip the NES ones. They suck pretty bad. Pick up WCW or NWO games on the N64 or No Mercy for the N64. Any of those you can find pretty cheap because N64 games are cheap. SmackDown Here Comes the Pain is probably the best PS2 game you can get.
SmackDown 2 for PS1, I would say. Or Here Comes the Pain for
PS2, and then SmackDown vs. Raw 2011 is probably the definitive version of those. And then if you want to buy it today, get 17 or 16, or wait till 18 comes out. I think are probably the best ones. With that, we are just about at our normal time. Yes. In a year, we'll revisit this and we'll complain about 2K18 and how it was overpriced and how Cena still wins on everything despite him not actually being in the product anymore. But it's and I'm sure that this is a very niche topic for our audience, just because I know there are plenty of people that we know that love to make fun of us on the internet for loving watching sweaty men roll around on a mat for 15 minutes at a time.
But I think I say we'll try and get another episode out sooner rather than later, because this is such a niche one for everybody else. We've definitely got an episode we'd like to do with a guest, which we apparently can never actually physically do, but we will do it. So it only leaves me to say thank you very much for joining us. You can follow me on Twitter at GWH. You can follow Chris on Twitter at DragonmanTank. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Jerks Talk Games. And you can find us at jerkstalkgames.com, where you can get an invitation to our Slack channel if you'd like to sit around and not talk all day long. And you can find us on iTunes and Google Music and everywhere else on the internet where you can get podcasts.
You're pointing at me. Why are you pointing at me? Oh, it's that time, is it? Yes. So, thank you everybody for listening. And remember, a winner is you. Oh, wait, no, that's not ours. Don't forget to save your game.
To be the man, woo! You gotta beat the man.